My daughter begged me to co-found a business with her, said she needed someone she could trust. I invested everything. The moment it took off, she changed the documents and pushed me out. What happened next shocked everyone. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Mirabelle Adams from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I never saw myself as a businessman, not really. I was more of a slow and steady type. Worked as a mechanical engineer for 30 years, married young, raised a daughter, paid off the house. I like structure. Loved knowing what time the bills were due, what was in the freezer, and how many miles were left before the next oil change. My wife, Lorna, used to joke that I ran our home like a cruise ship. But then she got sick. Cancer. Fast and cruel. By the time Marissa and I realized how bad it was, Lorna was already fading. After she passed, the house got quieter. Life slowed down. I tried to stay busy, volunteering, some light consulting, but nothing really filled the hole. Then one day, Marissa came to me, her eyes bright, and her voice trembling with something like hope. "Dad," she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table we'd had since she was 6. "I want to start my own company. I've got this idea for an all-natural skincare line. Stuff that actually works and doesn't wreck your face or the planet. But I can't do it alone. I need someone I can trust." It wasn't just the idea that pulled me in. It was the way she looked at me. Like I was the only lifeline she had in a sea of self-doubt. I hadn't seen that look since she was a teenager, back when she'd flunked her driver's test the first time and sobbed into my shirt, convinced she'd never be independent. I didn't say yes right away. I asked questions about sourcing, about marketing, about whether she had any experience in business. She waved me off with that quick, impatient grin of hers. "That's why I need you," she said. "You know how to build things that last." She wasn't wrong. I did. But I also knew what it meant to invest: money, time, heart, and what it cost when things fell apart. Still, I said yes. Not because I believed in the product, though she had something there, but because I believed in her. Or maybe I just wanted to believe there was still some way I could matter. We started small. She worked on the branding, the website, the social media. I handled the back end: tax filings, supplier contracts, lease agreements. We split the roles like we were running a household, not a company. When it came to legal protection, I filed the initial patent under my name. It was a quick decision, done with her approval at the time. I even remember saying, "It's just a placeholder. Once things stabilize, we'll figure out the equity." She nodded, not even looking up from her laptop. Yeah, of course, Dad. You're just keeping us protected." Those were the good days. The garage smelled like lavender and peppermint oil. We spilled things, we argued, we laughed. One night, after a string of online orders came in, our first taste of traction, she ran into the living room and tackled me into the couch cushions. "We did it," she squealed. "People actually like it." Her joy was infectious. For a moment, it felt like I had my little girl back. Not the distant, guarded young woman she'd become in her 20s, but the Marissa who used to braid her doll's hair and sing to herself while building Lego castles. But even in those early days, there were signs. Little things. She'd change details last minute and tell me afterward. She'd say she needed full access to the company bank account just for flexibility, but got defensive when I asked about certain charges. She stopped updating me about social media strategy or collaborations she was planning. "It's just boring influencer stuff," she'd say. "Nothing you'd care about." I told myself she was just growing into her role, that I needed to let her lead. But somewhere in my gut, a tight knot had begun to form. We outgrew the garage within 6 months, rented a small workspace downtown, hired 2 part-timers. Orders were doubling every quarter. Then came the TikTok video. Some influencer did a get ready with me, using one of our night serums. Boom, 50,000 units sold in 3 days. The rush nearly broke our system. I worked 20-hour days just to keep the logistics moving. Marissa barely looked up from her phone, relishing every follower, every comment calling her a girl boss or CEO queen. I was proud, yes, but also wary. Something had shifted. She was becoming someone I didn't fully recognize. The day the investors called, she didn't tell me. I found out through an assistant she'd hired without my knowledge. She's in the conference room, the girl said when I walked in with coffee and receipts. She's on a call with the venture group. I froze. Conference room? Venture group? That was when I knew. She'd started seeing herself as the sole captain of the ship. And me? I was just the old man she'd used to get the engine running. Later that night, I asked her about it. Tried to keep my tone light. So, who were the folks you were talking to earlier? She didn't even pause. Just some potential partners. Don't worry about it, Dad. I've got it covered. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I didn't realize I needed to worry about my own company being sold out from under me. She set down her wine glass and looked at me, flat, unreadable. You don't. It's my company now. I'm the face. The brand. You said you wanted me to lead. There it was. Plain as day. My stomach dropped. I hadn't said that. I'd said I wanted to help, to support, to guide. But in her mind, that translated to stepping aside. That was when the knot in my gut tightened into something unmovable. Something permanent. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car outside the office, staring at the building we'd built together, wondering where exactly I'd gone wrong. Maybe I gave too much. Maybe I hadn't taught her boundaries. Or maybe, just maybe, she was always going to choose ambition over loyalty. I just didn't want to see it. Success, when it came, didn't creep up quietly. It kicked down the door. One minute we were fighting to break even, and the next, our stock was flying off shelves before we could restock it. The influencer video went viral overnight. Some 20-something beauty guru praising our serum like it was holy water. Her face glowed, her followers multiplied, and within 72 hours, so did our sales. I'll never forget the look on Marissa's face when we hit 100,000 in revenue. She stood in our cramped office space with her phone in hand and tears in her eyes, whispering, "Oh my God, it's real." And it was. We went from hand-labeling bottles in my garage to leasing a small warehouse 2 cities over. Hired a fulfillment team. Invested in automation. Every week brought something new. Bigger orders, press inquiries, collaborations. We were riding a rocket. And at first, I was thrilled. Not just because the numbers were climbing, but because I saw Marissa blooming. She spoke with confidence, made decisions quickly, carried herself like a leader. For a moment, I let myself believe we were still in this together. I told everyone I knew, she's running the show now, and she's doing it beautifully. I said it with pride. But the truth was, I was starting to feel like a guest in a home I'd helped build. It was subtle at first. Meetings I wasn't invited to. Emails I wasn't copied on. I'd walk into the office and see everyone gathered around her desk, laughing about a rebrand I hadn't even known we were doing. When I'd ask questions, she'd brush me off. "It's just a design update, Dad. Nothing technical. Chill." I kept trying to remind myself that this was her vision. I was just there to support. But the more I backed off, the more I noticed how much of the foundation we'd laid together was quietly being rewritten, without my consent, and eventually, without my knowledge. I remember the first time I noticed my name missing from the promotional materials. We were doing a brand feature for a popular podcast, something called Founders in Fuel, and they'd asked for a company bio. When the host read it aloud during the episode, he said, "Founded by Marissa Lane, a visionary entrepreneur disrupting the eco-beauty industry." No mention of me. No hint of a co-founder. I sat in my car in the parking lot and listened to that line again and again. Visionary entrepreneur. Disrupting the industry. I didn't want credit, but I wanted truth. I wanted to exist. I confronted her about it that evening, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "I noticed they left my name out," I said casually, sliding the office door closed behind me. Was that a mistake or? She didn't even look up from her laptop. "Dad, you're not the target demo. It's not personal. People relate more to a solo female founder. It's just cleaner marketing. Cleaner. Like I was a stain to scrub out." I nodded slowly. "So we're rewriting history now? You think I'm just some investor who wandered in one day?" She sighed loudly, the way she used to when she was 15, and I'd ask if her homework was done. "I'm not doing this with you tonight. You want recognition? Fine. I'll talk to the PR team." But she never did. The next few weeks only cemented the shift. I started receiving fewer updates. The financials I once had full access to became summarized spreadsheets I was allowed to review monthly. One afternoon, I logged into our internal portal only to find my administrative permissions revoked. I couldn't adjust inventory, review orders, or even approve expenses. When I brought it up to her, she rolled her eyes. "You kept messing with things." I had to centralize control. This is how real companies operate. That was the first time she said it. Real companies. As if I'd been playing dress up while she did the real work. It hit me like a cold slap. Not because she'd taken over. I expected that, even encouraged it, but because of the way she erased me from the narrative. Like I was an inconvenience, a relic, something to manage quietly while she posed for magazine spreads and influencer collabs. Still, I didn't walk away. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd find her way back. That deep down, she still saw me not just as a financial backer or operations guy, but as her father, the man who stood by her when no one else would. But hope, I've learned, is a fragile thing when held too long. It all came crashing down one Monday morning when I stopped by the bank to sign off on a vendor payment. The teller pulled up our account and frowned. "Looks like you're no longer an authorized signer, Mr. Lane." I laughed, confused. "That's impossible. I set up the account." She double-checked. "It was updated last week. Only Marissa Lane has access now." I left the bank in a daze. My name wasn't just removed, it had been erased. I called her immediately, tried to keep my voice steady. "What the hell is going on, Marissa? Why am I locked out of the business account?" She answered calmly. Too calmly. "I needed to streamline financials. You've been out of the loop for months anyway." I could barely speak. "You cut me out. Without a conversation. Without a signature." She hesitated, just a second, but it was enough. Then she said, "Legally, I'm allowed to. You never transferred the patent, remember? That's the only thing still in your name. Everything else is mine now." And that's when it hit me. She had planned this. Quietly. Strategically. She had watched me work late nights, watched me pour my savings into the foundation, and all the while, she'd been waiting for the right moment to take it all. Not just the company, but the credit, the ownership, the very story of how it began. I sat in my car for an hour that day, hands on the wheel, the radio silent. All I could hear was her voice in my head, cool and controlled. "Everything else is mine now." But it wasn't. Not yet. She'd forgotten one crucial thing. The patent. Still mine. And I knew, in that moment, I might have lost the business, but I wasn't done yet. I didn't go back to the office the next day, or the day after that. I told myself I needed time to think, to sort out what legal recourse I had. But the truth was simpler. I couldn't face her. Not like that. Not after she gutted me without even flinching. There's something about betrayal from your own child that leaves a mark you can't explain to anyone else. It wasn't just about ownership or money. It was the way she did it. Quietly. Calculated. As if I was a stranger to her, a stepping stone, a placeholder until the real spotlight came. I stayed in my house with the blinds drawn, the TV on mute, just watching the clock hands move. I reread the patent paperwork twice a day, as if seeing my signature in ink could make the last year make sense. Everything was still registered to me. The core formula, the brand's scientific backbone, even the original lab notes we'd compiled. She'd taken the business, yes, but she'd built it on top of a foundation she didn't legally own. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than confusion or heartbreak. I felt resolve. The confrontation wasn't planned. I didn't rehearse a speech or storm into her office with lawyers. I just showed up. Midday. She was in the middle of a product shoot, flashbulbs popping, stylists fixing her blazer collar like she was royalty. When she saw me at the edge of the studio, she stiffened, but didn't pause the shoot. I waited, arms crossed, watching her perform like nothing had happened. After 10 minutes, she finally turned to me. "What are you doing here?" I didn't raise my voice. "We need to talk." She glanced at the photographer, then sighed. "Fine. 10 minutes. She led me to her glass-walled office, the same space I'd once picked out for us when we moved into the building. The walls were still bare, save for 2 framed magazine covers featuring her. Not us. Just her. I sat down. She didn't. You have no right to show up unannounced. I looked her in the eyes. I had every right. You built this place on top of my back. She scoffed, arms crossed. Don't start with that again. I've worked harder in the past year than you ever did in your entire career. That cut deeper than I expected. But I didn't flinch. I'm not here to argue about effort. I'm here to talk about ownership. The patent is mine, Marissa. You've been using it illegally since the day you locked me out. Her eyes narrowed, but I saw the flicker. Panic, masked under irritation. That was a temporary oversight. I was going to transfer it once everything was settled. Settled? I leaned forward. You changed the business documents without my signature. You froze me out of our joint account. You rerouted company mail so it came to your address. You weren't settling anything. You were staging a takeover. She didn't deny it. Instead, she shifted tactics. I did what I had to do. You were slowing things down, micromanaging, out of touch. And that gave you the right to lie? To steal? God, listen to yourself, she snapped. You're acting like I robbed a bank. I built this company. Me. Not your patent. Not your spreadsheets. Me. I stood up slowly, the air thick with the things we weren't saying. You didn't just take a business, Marissa. You took me out of your life. You treated me like some vendor you could fire when it got inconvenient. Her voice cracked, barely. I needed space. I needed freedom to lead. You needed character. That did it. She went silent. Her lip quivered, just slightly, but she blinked it away. I'm not letting this go, I said quietly. You tried to sell what you don't own. If I take this public, every investor, every buyer, every lawyer will know the product's legal foundation doesn't belong to you. She looked down at her desk. I saw her jaw clench. And for a split second, I felt a pang, guilt, maybe. But it passed. You wouldn't, she said. I would, I replied. And I will. Unless you come clean. She didn't say another word. I left her office, walked past the photo crew, the interns, the buzz of a brand built on lies. I didn't look back. That night, my phone rang 3 times. She didn't leave a message the first 2. The third time, she did. Her voice was raw, high-pitched, frantic. Dad, how could you do this to me? You're going to destroy everything I've built. You're bitter because people see me now. You never believed I could do this alone. You just wanted control. You always did. I listened to it twice, then saved it. Not because I needed evidence, but because I needed to remember how far she was willing to go to rewrite the truth, and how easily she could spin betrayal into martyrdom. I forwarded the patent documents to my lawyer the next morning. No more waiting. The first call came from someone I didn't recognize, an executive assistant with a clipped tone and too much polish in her voice. She left a message, formal and vague. Mr. Lane, I'm reaching out regarding a transaction your daughter Marissa Lane is currently negotiating. We'd appreciate a brief conversation about your involvement in the original IP. I sat there holding my phone, still in pajamas, coffee untouched. It wasn't a question of if she was trying to sell the company. It was when. And now, it seemed, that moment had arrived. The buyer was a major player, one of those sleek California equity firms that buys up small brands, polishes the image, and flips them for triple. They didn't care about origin stories or family history. They cared about legal clarity, ownership, clean documentation. And that was the one thing Marissa no longer had. Because she'd never secured the patent transfer. Because she assumed I'd disappear quietly, like a ghost. Because she believed that blood ties were a leash she could tighten or loosen at her convenience. I agreed to meet the firm's lawyers the next day, discreetly, in a coffee shop tucked inside a hotel downtown. I wore my old blazer, the one I'd last used for our first investor pitch. It still smelled faintly of lavender oil. Fitting. The lawyer who met me looked fresh out of grad school, but spoke with the assurance of someone used to cleaning up other people's messes. Mr. Lane, he began, sliding a folder across the table. We're in the final stage of acquisition discussions with Ms. Lane. However, during due diligence, your name appeared multiple times, most notably on the original product patent. I nodded. That's correct. I wrote the formula, filed the patent, paid for it myself. Have you transferred those rights to Ms. Lane in any official capacity? No, I said plainly. And she knows that. He hesitated for a moment. Then, carefully, She represented to our firm that all intellectual property had been consolidated under her name. I let the silence stretch. Let the weight of her deception settle between us. May I ask why you never pursued formal recourse? I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Because I never thought she'd try to sell something that didn't belong to her. I believed she'd do the right thing eventually. He nodded, lips pressed tight. Would you be willing to provide documentation to confirm your ongoing legal ownership? I reached into my briefcase and handed him a copy of the original patent filing. Signed, notarized, time-stamped. Ironclad. I already have, I said. He closed the folder slowly. Understood. The entire meeting lasted less than 15 minutes, but as I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the air felt different, charged, cleaner. For the first time in months, I felt power tilt slightly back into my hands. I wasn't trying to destroy her, but I was done being erased. The fallout didn't take long. 2 days later, her voice thundered through my voicemail again, this time unhinged. What the hell did you do? They pulled out. You went behind my back and ruined the deal. Do you have any idea what you've done? That was my future, Dad. That was everything. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Just accused, over and over, as if I'd set fire to something pure and sacred. I called her back. She answered on the first ring, but I didn't wait for pleasantries. I told them the truth, Marissa. I showed them documents you never had the decency to ask about. You sabotaged me. No, I said calmly. You sabotaged yourself. You tried to sell off a product you didn't own. That's called fraud. Oh, come on. Don't act like some moral authority. You're just bitter because I succeeded without you. My hands clenched around the phone. Succeeded? You alienated your only partner. You cut out your own father. You rewrote history because you thought it made a better headline. She went quiet. I continued, slower now. I never wanted the spotlight. I never wanted control. I just wanted respect. Acknowledgement. You couldn't even give me that. You don't understand how hard it is, she finally muttered. Being a woman in this space. They expect you to be perfect, to have built it all on your own. And instead of challenging that, you lied. You erased the person who made it possible. You didn't have to become them to beat them. The line went dead a few seconds later. She didn't call back. Word spread fast. Our industry was small, the kind of place where secrets leak like water through cracked tile. The acquisition deal falling apart was newsworthy enough, but when whispers of the patent dispute started surfacing on beauty business blogs, the damage tripled. Her brand lost traction overnight. Influencers distanced themselves. One even posted a cryptic tweet, family over fame. Always. The comments section lit up with speculation. Her loyal followers split. Some defended her, some called her out for exploiting her own father. By week's end, hashtags were trending. Not in celebration, but in judgment. A mutual acquaintance, Jen, who used to work PR for us, called me late one night. I know you probably didn't want this, she said softly. But it needed to happen. She's been spiraling for months. No one could say anything. You did the hard thing. I didn't respond right away. I was staring at a photo on my shelf. Marissa at age 8, covered in glitter from a school play, holding my hand like it was the only thing anchoring her to earth. Hard doesn't even begin to cover it. I finally said. You still love her, Jen said. Not as a question, just a fact. Of course I do. But you can't keep letting her burn everything down just to prove she's holding the match. That stuck with me. It still does. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was decay. The kind of quiet that creeps in after something rots from the inside. I stayed off social media, but people still found me. Emails trickled in. Some sympathetic, old friends, former colleagues, even a few customers who'd pieced together the drama from industry gossip. I had no idea what she did to you. You deserved better. Thank you for standing up. There are more of us dealing with things like this than you know. I read every one, but none of them made it easier to get out of bed in the morning. My house felt emptier than it had in years. Not just because Marissa wasn't calling, but because the thing I thought we were building together had vanished without a trace of honesty. What remained were fragments. Broken trust, legal emails, sleepless nights, and a sharp ache behind my ribs that I couldn't name. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something worse, hollow. There's no pain quite like watching someone you raised decide you're disposable. The real blow came at a family cookout, a cousin's graduation, packed with relatives I hadn't seen in months. I hadn't planned on going, but guilt dragged me there. I told myself it would be good to be around people. Bad call. The moment I stepped onto the patio, I felt eyes on me. Whispers. Side glances. I overheard a group near the drinks table muttering, "He ruined her deal. She was about to make it big, and he tanked it." Another said, "It's sad. You'd think a father would be proud she came so far." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab someone, anyone, and say, "Do you even know what she did?" But I didn't. I just stood there with my soda, nodding like I didn't hear any of it, like I hadn't sacrificed everything to keep her from drowning in her own ambition. She wasn't even there. Had the nerve to skip it, knowing the heat would fall on me. Smart move, really. Let the villain walk in without a rebuttal. Let them draw their own conclusions. Later that evening, Aunt Vanessa cornered me by the grill. Lorna's sister. Sharp-tongued. Never subtle. "She's hurting, you know," she said without preamble. Losing that deal crushed her. "She crushed it herself," I said calmly. "You didn't have to go scorched earth." I looked at her, amazed. I didn't sue her. I didn't leak anything. I showed buyers the legal truth. If she'd been honest, none of this would have happened. "She's young." "She's not that young." She crossed her arms. "Well, you've made your point. Are you done punishing her now?" I shook my head slowly. This isn't about punishment. It's about boundaries. For once in my life, I chose not to let someone walk over me just because we shared DNA. She didn't like that. Walked away without saying another word. And I realized right then, most people don't want the truth. They want an easy narrative. Father ruins daughter's business out of spite. That's simpler than unpacking betrayal and power dynamics and stolen ownership. 2 days after that party, I got a call from Nate, one of our old warehouse managers. He'd been fired by Marissa months earlier during a restructure that no one fully understood. "She let me go without notice," he said. Said we were pivoting. But she didn't even say thanks. I waited. "Why are you calling me now?" "Because I've been watching it all unravel. And I wanted you to know I saw it. From the inside. What she did wasn't right. She got big, and she got cold. You deserved better." It was the first time anyone had said it like that. "You don't owe me anything," I told him. "Maybe not. But you gave me a shot when no one else would. You ran that place with heart." People remember that. That call stuck with me for days. It reminded me that I hadn't imagined the respect I'd earned. That there had been a version of our company that felt human, before the branding, before the fake narratives and restructured press kits. The next week, Marissa finally showed up. It was around 7 p.m., just after sundown, when I saw her car pull into my driveway. I didn't move, just sat on the porch swing, watching as she stepped out, her expression unreadable. "I don't want to fight," she said. I gestured to the empty chair beside me. She sat. We didn't speak for a long time. "Eventually," she said, "you really destroyed everything." I stared straight ahead. "No, you did." She let out a dry laugh. "I was so close. Do you understand what that deal could have done for me?" "For you," I repeated. "Not for us. Not for the company. For you. That's the difference." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "I thought if I just got big enough, successful enough, I could make you proud." I looked at her then. Really looked. She wasn't glowing. She wasn't polished. She looked exhausted. Frayed. The makeup couldn't hide it. "I was already proud," I said. "You just didn't believe me." She looked down at her hands. "So what now?" "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "But we're not going back to how things were." "I can't. You showed me who you are when power's on the table." "I made a mistake." "No," I said. "You made a choice." She didn't respond. When she finally stood up to leave, she said, "I hope someday you'll forgive me." I didn't say anything. Because I didn't know if I would. The days that followed her visit were quieter than I expected. No follow-up call, no dramatic apology, no attempt at resolution. Just a silence that felt less like distance and more like understanding that neither of us had anything left to say. She'd made her choice. And this time, I was holding the line. I didn't check her social media. Didn't ask around about how the brand was doing. The company I had once poured my soul into had become a ghost town to me. Familiar only in name. I walked away from it not with bitterness, but with resolve. I had my mornings back. I'd rise early, brew my own coffee, and sit on the porch in the same swing where she'd once asked me to believe in her dream. The same swing where she told me I had ruined it. Life had stripped everything down to its bare bones, and in that silence, I found space to finally grieve. Not just the loss of a business or the betrayal of a daughter, but the collapse of an illusion I had held on to far too long. That love, by itself, could protect you from being used. I had loved her with my whole being, raised her after her mother passed, held her through her first heartbreak, paid for her college when she dropped out 3 times, believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. I wasn't perfect, no father is, but I had never once turned away from her. Until now. And that turning away didn't come from spite. It came from survival. Because watching her twist the truth, rewrite our story, and try to sell my trust as a product, it broke something inside me. Something that wouldn't be stitched back with words. People asked questions, of course. Friends from church, neighbors, even some of the staff from our earliest startup days. They'd stop me in the supermarket or shoot me polite texts. Have you spoken to Marissa? Will you ever go back into business? I always answered the same. We're not in contact right now. And that was the truth. Not out of punishment, but because some wounds heal best when left alone. A few weeks after that last porch conversation, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting instantly. Messy, rushed, a holdover from school days when she'd scribble grocery lists for her mom on the fridge. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Not an apology, not a confession. Just a line from one of the branding exercises we used to joke about in the early days. What you build with love should never become a weapon. That was it. No signature, no explanation. But I knew it was her way of acknowledging, quietly, that she saw the damage. That maybe, just maybe, she regretted it. I didn't frame the note. Didn't put it on the fridge like I would have once. I folded it and placed it in the back of my filing cabinet, between our original business plan and the patent documents. Not as a keepsake, as a reminder. I didn't hate her. I never could. But I'd stopped making excuses for her, and that felt like a form of freedom I didn't know I needed. Because for years, I told myself she was just ambitious, just driven, just trying to find her way. But what I missed, what I refused to see, was how much damage ambition can do when it's untethered from values. She didn't betray me because she stopped loving me. She betrayed me because, in that moment, she loved herself more. There was a time when I believed that was normal, that all children grow up and out of their parents' arms. But this was different. This was personal. This was surgical. And in that, I found my boundary. I began doing light consulting again, not for startups, but for small community projects. I helped a local food co-op organize their supply chain. Assisted a neighborhood women's shelter with grant applications. Nothing flashy, nothing viral, just real work with real people who said thank you and meant it. The kind of work that reminds you of your worth, not because of your name on a label, but because you show up with integrity. One afternoon, a teenage intern at the shelter asked me if I had any kids. I paused. I have a daughter, I said. Is she proud of what you do? I thought about it. About the silence. About the voicemail. About the envelope. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know I am. That night, I walked past the shelf where we used to keep our early product samples. I hadn't touched it in months. Most of the labels had faded, the bottles dusty. I pulled one down, the original serum. The one we tested over and over in my garage. I uncapped it and took a breath. The scent hadn't changed. Lavender and something else. Hope, maybe. I placed it back and turned out the light. I may have lost the business, but she lost the one man who ever believed in her without condition, without clause, without agenda. And maybe that loss will echo one day, long after the lights dim and the followers fade. Maybe one day she'll remember what it meant to be trusted like that. And maybe she'll wish she hadn't turned that love into leverage. But that's her burden to carry now. I've carried mine long enough. If you've ever drawn a line with someone you love, knowing it might cost you everything but save your self-respect, this story is for you. Sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you'd never imagine could turn their back. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? And if this story struck a chord, Don't forget to subscribe for more raw, honest stories of family, power, and choosing yourself. See you soon in the next story.